Build up. A single word that weighs an unfathomable amount when referring to a story. Build up can be found in many things. Maybe it's subtle hints throughout the narrative, or maybe it's a straight line that can be clearly defined through key points in the story. Either way you look at it, it is a necessity. The easiest way to tell that it is a necessity is by looking at any story outline ever created.
It is basically just a series of events that rise toward the climax.
The rising action is arguably the longest part of the story, and for good reason. It is the story. The climax means nothing if you don't care what's happening. Ball, the Raiden Shogun. She goes by many names, but one clear reason the Inazuma story works is because of this single character. She's not only an antagonist, but a terrifying force with more overwhelming power than we've ever seen before. Tell me one other character that has shown to be an overwhelming force. You might say Child, but we never saw him fight anything other than a few guards at the start of the Liyue story. But Cammy, I hear you retort. He bodied some ruin guards in this story mode. And I would have to reply with, you better shut up, okay? You better shut the fuck up before I drive to your house and suplex you harder than that one All Might sent all the way to the Shadow Realm.
United!
On a more serious note, that doesn't count. We are talking about the story as everything set prior before its climactic end. You can't say, oh, story A is good because story B made it better 2 weeks later. That simply doesn't make any sense. Now, if they showed Child to go Super Saiyan Ultra Instinct before we fought him, that would have been absolutely terrifying. But there was never a moment in the Liyue story that showed him to be a threat. He was always more of just a sugar daddy for Zhongli to suckle on. Your next answer might be, well, the drag... Shut up! Okay, what did I just say? What did I just say? There was no build-up for either of the two dragons. The best one with any sort of build-up was Dvalin, but all he did was send a couple of tornadoes that did literally nothing. It just made me do the worst quest ever. Collect ads that got scattered all around Mondstadt. I was stuck on this stupid quest for a week because I was just too stubborn to look up their locations, okay? In the past video, I talked about how good of a jumping off point Kazuha's story was to Inazuma and the main antagonist of the region. I also spoke all about the filler they front-loaded in the Inazuma storyline, like the infamous tax scene. If you haven't seen that video, then you're dead to me. But if you want to not be dead to me, you can click the icon at the top right if future Cammy remembers, which he always does. Haha. Like I said before, this video is specifically tailored to the goods of Inazuma's story and a bit of the bad. Now that I'm reading what I wrote, I said very little of the bad, and turns out there's a bit of it. Anyway, so let's start with Toma and Miss Kamisato Ayaka. Toma asks us to see Miss Kamisato, hoping that she might be able to persuade the Traveler in helping the Resistance and stopping the Shogun's Vision Hunt decree. Though the Traveler is supposed to be the player, it's strange that they didn't even give us the ability to choose to help Kamisato. Instead, they gave us the options of, I don't want to help the Vision Hunt decree, or you end up going sicko mode on them and absolutely obliterating them and everything that they believe in.
Stay out! Get out! Out! Because you just said you're gonna give substitutes crap because you can.
After taking on Kamisato's request, we wander around Inazuma, trying to help the people who fell prey to the Vision Hunt decree. This is a good way to show something never explored before in Genshin's story. What happens when a vision is taken away? Through this question, we are shown the devastating ramifications of such an action, and how it affects even people without visions. This is both more filler, but also done slightly right. If they could have trimmed some of the fat, it would have been a bit perfect, but it's still just a little too long to the point that I was questioning whether or not I should just be reading all of this, or should I just skip the button right out? The only reason that I didn't do that was because the premise was so intriguing that I couldn't help but learn how we were going to fix this. And, but we didn't. We just helped out the other people a little bit, hear their sad stories, and then go scurry off to some other poor sap who's got dementia. After finishing Kamisato's quest, we noticed that Toma was gone missing. So we, one minute. I just noticed that I missed a huge part. After heading back to the tea house, we see Kamisato for the first time. Well, not counting the entire year she was in the beta version, but who remembers that, right? Kamisato want to remember, I bet. We then run into Yoimiya, a bright firecracker of a girl with an explosive personality with a sparkling dream. Hope you're strapped in, baby, because I got a lot more of those jokes coming your way. We learn that she helps vision holders keep their visions by either hiding them or even having fake visions made. But there's a problem. The creator of the fake visions have been captured by the leader of the Shogun's army. So, Yoimiya and the emergency food break in to save him. Though it was a little less of a break-in and a little more of a quiet stroll through the prison, just as you get to the place he's being held, you notice that he's undergone hours of torture in order to find who he's working with. That's when we meet the army's #1 general, Kujo Sara. Through an act of unusual kindness, she allows us to escape the prison. This section could be chalked up as more filler, but since it took place in a new environment and gave us new mechanics to mess around a bit in the dungeon, it didn't really feel like filler at all. It actually felt like the story was starting to ramp up. Little did we know that this was just a prelude to the storm. I'm going to skip over the 2 side stories they force you to do. They're not great, but they also help us learn more about Inazuma and get us more familiarized with Kamisato and Yoimiya. Honestly, it would have been better if they didn't force you to do those 2 quests. The best thing helping the story at this time is the accompaniment of a new island to explore. When starting the Leeway story, you had to travel from one end of the world to the other on foot. By the time you actually got to the other end of the map and started the Leeway quest, you had probably already explored a good portion of the area. As for Inazuma, most of the main quest line for the first half of the story lie on the single island. That means you can start the quest line, get to a stopping point, and then do some exploring. Also, Yoimiya was adorable. Come on. After doing both stories, we finally get to the back of the tea house to find that Toma was gone missing. No, not missing. He was arrested by the Shogun's army and escorted directly to the shrine lying outside of her estate. He, just like many others, would lose his vision. The traveler rushes out to the tea house and immediately sprints to the shrine. That's when we see her for the very first time.
Capable of using elemental energy without a vision. You are an exception, it appears. Exceptions, the enemy of eternity. You will be inlaid upon this statue.
not only commands your attention, but forces it with her cold, calculative eyes. Then she rips the visions from Toma's side and commands it to her. That's when the traveler defies eternity. He leaps from the side and catches the vision. He lands before her, peering up to a god. She and her statue built from confiscated visions tower over the traveler. Everything she had done, all of her ideologies and sacrifices made in the name of eternity, was bearing down on the singular creature in her path. Her eyes flutter. It is intrigue or disdain that crosses her mind. It is both. Guards arrest the traveler, but he makes quick work of them. He then attempts to free the bound Toma, but not quick enough. The eyes quickly dart back to the statue to find the shogun calmly approaching them on steps of lightning. Even her demeanor is that of a person holding pure dominance over the situation. With only a few lines, she defines the reasons for her coming actions, simple enough for even a toddler to understand.
Capable of using elemental energy without a vision. You are an exception, it appears. Exceptions. The enemy of eternity.
Lightning rips from the shogun's body, but the traveler does not falter. He steps forward filled with the righteous conviction. Then, with a burst of lightning, she summons forth a weapon signifying the pinnacle of swordsmanship, the Muso no Hitotachi, the same weapon used to kill Kazuha's friend. With that sword eclipsing the stone statue, she lets out a single, effortless strike. Reality itself buckles before her will, shattering like fragile glass and consuming the traveler in a realm of absolute darkness, a realm known as euthymia. The Merriam-Webster defines euthymia as a stable mental state or mood in those affected by bipolar disorder. This is neither manic nor depressive. This is a very telling definition when understanding everything about the story, but we will go back to this definition later. Just keep it in the back of your head. In this plane of euthymia, we find a second Raiden Shogun. Floating in the state of pure bliss, an eclipse rises behind her, setting the scene perfectly. What comes next is one of the hardest boss battles in the entire game. She seems to have full control over the situation, even stripping you of the one thing giving you power, your vision. This can be circumvented if you play as a traveler for this encounter, due to the traveler not having a vision. After the long fight, another cutscene is triggered, showing the traveler having his world absolutely rocked by Raiden Shogun's overwhelming might. He is then forced out of the realm of euthymia unconscious. If it weren't for Toma's haste, the traveler's story would have ended right then and there. This is, if I'm not mistaken, the first time the traveler had ever lost an actual one-on-one fight. This not only makes the Raiden Shogun more threatening, but also increases the story stakes to an all-time high. Toma and the traveler barely escapes the Raiden's army. After finally getting back to the tea house, Toma requests the traveler to go to Oh my god. Tea house, Toma requests after finally getting back to the tea house, Toma requests the traveler to go to Tatarasuna. After finally getting back to the tea house, Toma requests the traveler to go to Tatarasuna. After finally getting back to the tea house, Toma requests the traveler to go to Tatarasuna. Toma requests the traveler to go to Oh my god. After finally getting back to the tea house, Toma requests the traveler to go to Tatarasuna. After finally getting back to the tea house, Toma requests the traveler to go to Tatarasuna in his stead to find the resistance. With the shogun sending out an arrest warrant for the traveler, this is the only place left for him to go. So, the traveler makes his way towards a fractured island. Once there, we learn that the horrible state of the people of the resistance live in. To prevent the enemy army from capturing all of them, they live on an island of eternal thunder and lightning. Rain ceases to stop as the island is covered by dark clouds. This can be undone via a side quest, but for the context of the situation and a lore perspective, this story takes place before the side quest is completed. Another thing to note is that the giant bones can be found scattered across this island. For this alone, you have to give MiHoYo a round of applause. They made each island have its own unique story and characteristics about it. No two islands from Inazuma are identical. Each have their own story built into them by their structure alone. This cannot be said for Mondstadt or Liyue. Most of Liyue is considered to be brown Mondstadt and lacking in identity. If I were to put two areas of Liyue side by side, they could be distinguished from one another. But that's not good enough. They need to have an identity through not only looks but also landmarks. Inazuma's map design focuses on building a story for each island and shoving lore out the wazoo into them. They breathe character and add to the overall storytelling experience, since you're not only hearing about legends but also seeing them sprawled out around you. Let's take a short intermission before continuing. In the meantime, let me grab a glass of water. Oh, hey Forg. How's life? Alright, cool. Oh, could you do me a favor? Could you stop doing whatever that is? Okay, thanks. Bye! On your way to the Resistance's location, you save a man by the name of Tepe. This is one part of the story that has been done a disservice, but we will come back to that later. Tepe escorts you to the Resistance's headquarters where you meet Goro, the goodest of boys and the Resistance's general. You then learn the Resistance's commander, Saganomiya Kokomi, has been missing for some time now. Time passes, mostly involving filler between you and Tepe, before coming to the big climactic midpoint of the story. On the coast between Yashiori Island and Kanazuka, the two sides meet, one led by Goro and his steadfast beliefs of freedom, the other led by Kujo-Sara and her beliefs in the Raiden Shogun's will. Though discourse is brewing between the two sides, a deal is offered. Hand over the traveler and there will be a brief moment of respite. All the potential bloodshed can be ended, even if it's just for a moment. This emphasizes Sara's characters once more. She internally distastes the thought of meaningless pain inflicted on another. But she still has a righteous side, believing in her shogun wholeheartedly. One might believe those two things are a conflict of interest, but remember, justice is the most humane way of dealing with the criminal. Because Goro is the goodest of boys, he refuses to surrender one of his companions. He then quotes a line from Miss Kokomi: "The resistance never betrays one of its own." A righteous stance to take during the brutality of war. That's when the traveler shows up, ready to help the resistance in any way he can. Sara proposes a second arrangement, allowing the traveler to fight in a one-on-one battle of honor. Though such a fight is meaningless to the overall situation, it does give Sara an opportunity to capture the traveler. This shows, once again, her determination to uphold the Shogun's will while keeping casualties to a minimum. If she can capture the traveler here, then there would be no need for anyone else getting hurt. The traveler accepts, and a totally fair, completely not rigged fight happens. Just the plain old 101 with no caveats. And why is there another person stepping into the ring? Is this legal? Well, at least they made it look like a scene from Ghost of Tsushima. After dunking on some basic white boys, the real battle begins.
Hold the line! Her Excellency!
My comrades, now is our moment!
Alright, let me just pause right here. The moment Kazuha showed up in the broken down ship felt unreal to me on my first playthrough. The last time we saw Captain Beidou and her crew was hours ago, making this scene even more surprising to witness. It was a good callback to both Beidou being the only person capable of getting on the island, as well as Kazuha wanting to fight against the Raiden Shogun's will. On top of that, we see a reason why Kokomi has been missing for so long. She was trying to recruit Beidou's crew to the resistance.
Calm as the breeze, my lady.
I just hope you can afford all these mercs you've gathered!
Kazuha! We meet again, old friend.
Retreat!
All forces, retreat!
After all that fighting, and ultimately Sara's retreat, we come to the end of the second act. To be honest with you all, I don't remember there being so much filler in the first 2 acts. It might be due to my bias since Inazuma was the first new region with a whole new archon and story continuation, or it could have been how they presented the story in the first place. For example, the part of the story where you enter a jail and rescue somebody could have been cut entirely, meaning it was simply filler content. But this part of the story let us know more about Sara, Yoimiya, and the puzzles present in Inazuma. You could say that this part of the story is filler done right, and the tax part is filler done wrong. There was some more parts that we glossed over, like Teppei trying to look cool in front of his friends, but that all in all took a minuscule amount of time in comparison to the other filler scenes they've added. If I were to rank the story at this point, I'd give it a 6 out of 10. They had some spectacular scenes that brought the story to some incredible high points, but the slow start and the odd point in the middle where they force you to complete both Yoimiya's story and Ayaka's brings the score down a peg. Next up is the final chapter of the Inazuma storyline. Will this be better or worse? Good or bad? Well, let's find out. Hi fellow gamers, it's been about, I don't know, like 4 months since I last started recording this video. I decided, hey, Genshin's pretty dead, so let's procrastinate until Sumeru comes out so that I can hop on that everyone's playing Genshin again wagon. And yeah, we're about a month out, so let's get into it. I also took feedback from myself that I sounded somewhat dead in the last recording, so I'll try to make it sound a little more entertaining for you guys, okay? Let's go. The first thing I noticed when watching over the story a second time was the story's duration. Where the first half was almost 5 hours long, the second half was... Wait a minute. What does that say? Act 3? Does that mean that these stories are supposed to be separated into 3 parts? Well, that never crossed my mind. I always saw that this was being taken as part 2 of the story, but I guess they gave us 2 parts at Inazuma's release. I can't tell if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Anyway, let's continue. The story opens with the traveler grouping up with Teppei. This is when he takes him over to Watatsumi Island, a place I totally didn't explore 5 hours before touching the Archon quest. The most incredible thing about this place is its aesthetic. It's as if the design team were told to make a place look like it's from The Little Mermaid, so they made one of the most stunning islands in all of Genshin Impact. Dare I say, top 20 locations in all of gaming? This is the island Kokomi resides on and the location of the Resistance's headquarters. She bestows upon you the greatest title known to man, the leader of the legendary Swordfish 2, a profound group made of only the most elite of the elite units. This is also when she tells you that they have a mysterious group sending over helpful supplies in order to support the Resistance's efforts. On top of that, they don't even ask for anything in return. But there's nothing to worry about that. We have Kokomi residing over the operation, the smartest military tactician in all of Inazuma. You are then asked to meet up with the previous captain of Swordfish 2. Once there, you are asked to murder these innocent bystanders in order to prove your worth. The traveler obliges. Skip forward a little bit and the traveler learns Teppei is fighting in the front lines against the Shogun's army. Worried for their goofy friend, Paimon and the traveler return to the training ground awaiting his return. Once Teppei's back, he tells you all about how well he performed during the recent naval battle and how Kokomi has given him his own special operations unit to run. Just by listening to him talk, you can feel his bubbly attitude leaking out. The voice actor for this character, in respects to the English VA, was done very well. He even tells you how excited he is to try on his new uniform once it's made. This is when a friendly competition between you and Teppei arises. Nothing too serious, just some lighthearted fun. After leaving Watatsumi Island, your next task was to check out the old ruins on the coast of Yashiori Island. This is where we meet Teppei again, and he's looking a little under the weather. His hair has also changed from black to gray, making him look like he's suddenly 20 years older. Paimon immediately starts talking about how strange the ruins are, making the common viewer believe that the ruins are what's causing Teppei's health to decline. Then they delve deeper into the island's lore, exploring the reasons behind the giant snake corpse. Long ago, the god of Watatsumi's people went berserk. Without reason, it started swimming towards Yashiori Island. In retaliation, A drew her Masuo no Hitotachi, slaying the beast before harm could be done to her people. More is shown about this story later, but that's not until later, of course. It is hinted that the shogun lost something precious to her during that time, but it doesn't clarify what. We then return to Kokomi, where it is learned that some soldiers are experiencing accelerated aging. The soldiers experiencing this phenomenon are also those who've retrieved the weapons from their mysterious sponsor. Strangely enough, these weapons look like fake visions, but I digress. Turns out it was the Fatui all along. Wow! Who could have seen that coming? Oh my god, crazy how people who give support with nothing in return turn out to be evil. What a coincidence! After speaking with Goro and Kokomi, we rush over to the training ground and search for Teppei. There we find him old and weak. Even in this state, Teppei is focused entirely on his duty as a commander. He can't stand, he can barely speak, and yet he's determined to see his efforts through. He tells the traveler of the amazing things he's overcome because of the Fatui's gift, people he was able to help, the feats he was able to overcome, things he believed impossible before meeting the traveler. He then looks up to the traveler, finally showing what he looks like. Teppei, barely resembling the young and vibrant person we met only a few hours prior, his skin clinging to his bones as he asks, "Where's my secret weapon?" This shows the true extent Teppei was willing to go and unravels his character perfectly for the audience to see. He is the epitome of change. Now, that might sound odd, but just let me explain for a minute. Teppei desired to help people, no matter the obstacle in his path. Even if it cost him his life, he was willing to die in order to further the Resistance's goals. He desired, till the very end, for change. On the other hand, the Raiden Shogun wanted stillness and an eternity of calm, a state of pure, unfaltering constant. She did not care for the desires of others, she did not care for the lives of others, she did not care for change. I'm sure the contrast between the two are becoming obvious. Teppei is pathetically weak, the Raiden is overwhelmingly strong. Teppei cares for others, the Raiden will murder any who oppose her. Teppei sacrifices himself in order to help the resistance, the Raiden Shogun sacrificed her happiness to protect her people. Maybe what I'm saying is simply a misrepresentation of what is actually happening in the story. Maybe I'm looking too deep into it, or maybe these things are mere coincidences. Nevertheless, it's an interesting concept to think about. Alright, let's go back to Teppei dying. Upon losing his secret weapon, he feels worthless to the cause, becoming nothing but a burden to them once more. It is then that the traveler tells Teppei the nature of the secret weapon. The item that stole away Teppei's age is known as a delusion. It is a strange weapon that seems to act similar to nature to a vision. I'm going to go a little bit into the lore about visions, even though I have an itty bitty baby pea brain, so if I get anything wrong, I'm sure you'll correct me in the comments. Though a vision is gifted upon the people by the gods, a delusion is a manufactured vision, allowing a normal human to draw out the power of one of the 7 elements. This, however, comes at a price. Similar to Tartaglia switching between Hydro and Electro, after staying in his Electro state for a set period of time, he must recover from exhaustion. Tartaglia is a special case though. He's able to control his delusion a set amount without it taking too great of a toll on his body. For Teppei's case, he's just a normal person. The toll taken on somebody with no experience and little knowledge of the delusion's effects will be sucked dry of their life force, which is the reason behind Teppei's accelerated aging. Upon learning of the side effects, Teppei's voice becomes shaky and sorrowful. One thing can be said for sure, Teppei's voice actor nailed this part. He beautifully depicts the character's weak voice while still showing Teppei's bubbly personality hidden beneath his declining health. This should be the bar for voice actors. Not the world's best is needed, simply people putting in effort with a pinch of raw talent to spice the whole dish. Ah, perfecto. Finally, with Teppei's dying breath, Here, let me just play it for you.
Over the past few days, and I have this strange sense of dread. At first, I'd find I was a little more beat than usual after a battle. Didn't think anything of it. But today, I got back and suddenly my vision was going blurry. This is a real shame. There I was, thinking I was catching up with you. Guess I didn't receive the favor of the gods after all. Hey, would you do something for me? When our uniforms are ready, grab mine for me. Bring it back here, and we can change together. What's that look for? Don't worry, partner. As soon as I've rested up, I'll be right as rain. Right as rain, I tell you. As soon as I've rested up.
Teppei.
What a heartbreaking scene. Alright, now let me tell you why Teppei's death scene sucks. I know I built it up a bunch, but just give me a moment and I'll explain. The problem with not only Teppei, but this whole scene in general is time. Pretty simple concept, but it seems MiHoYo just doesn't understand how to space out their storytelling properly. Let's separate the Inazuma storyline into 3 acts, like they did. We meet Teppei in the second act, about halfway through. If you don't believe me, just look. The abundance of time spent with Teppei during the second act can be summarized as this: save from bandits, talk with Teppei's friends, and that's about it. Out of the hour-long second act, we spend around 20 to 30 minutes with Teppei, and that's being generous. After starting the third act, we spend around 20 to 30 minutes with him before he's killed off. Now, let's round up and say we spend an hour of time with our boy Teppei here. That sounds pretty good, does it not? Well, it would be good for a movie, but not for a game. By the time you finally get attached to the character, he's killed off before you know it. Let's put this into perspective. The entire Inazuma storyline is about 6 hours and 30 minutes long. Our time spent with Teppei isn't even 1/6 of the story's runtime. Let's say time spent doesn't matter. Well then, another problem that we run into is character design. Teppei looks like 1,000 other characters we've already seen and spoken to, meaning we already have a precognition to believe that he's simply another NPC that holds no grounds to the story and is worthless. Just a mere speed bump in the scheme of things. And you know what we do with speed bumps? It doesn't help any time Teppei is in the story, it's obviously a filler section. And now, what do we do with... Let's assume you didn't pass out during these filler parts, or mentally checked out. Next problem we find ourselves in is the absolute speed Teppei dies in the third act. Let's play a game. How long did it take Teppei to die within a 2.5 hour act? Was it, let's see, he died 24 minutes in. Speedrunner blood must course through his veins, cause I think that's a world record, boys. Now that I've gotten you all worked up, let me tell you how I would make it approximately 1 billion times better. First, let Teppei be the one welcoming us into Inazuma instead of budget Tartaglia. That will allow us more time to get attached to the character and set up in our monkey brains that he's not just another throwaway NPC. It would also mean every scene Teppei was in wasn't a filler scene, guaranteeing we could actually read his dialogue. Another thing I would do was give us a few quiet scenes with the character. For example, during the first act in the tea house after having a banquet, Teppei tells us how he envies our strength and wishes he was as strong as us. Then, in Act 2, Goro tells us how he accepted the help from an unknown supporter. This would also make Kokomi not look so freaking stupid. and instead make Goro look like a person with good intentions but trusts people too easily. Kind of like how a dog be doing. Finally, in Act 3, we learn that Teppei got a weapon from an unknown supporter and the story would play out from there. This would connect the 3 acts in a more cohesive way, fix the current problems with the story, and make Teppei's death both surprising and devastating to the reader. But no, instead we have a rushed mess that simply falls flat. The worst part isn't that Teppei died, it's the lost potential Teppei's death could have had for the story. I feel like I made my point to the best of my ability. Let's continue. You talk with Kokomi and Goro once more about the current situation, blah blah blah. We find a lead about the location of the delusion factory and dived right in. After exploring the factory and solving a few puzzles along the way, the traveler runs into a familiar face. In a room filled with purple smog, Scaramouche stands above the traveler on a small platform. It's here where we learn a little more about Scaramouche and his mentality. The worst part is, most of what Scaramouche says is logically correct. The people in the resistance, if the traveler hadn't shown up, would have most likely perished before the almighty Shogun, making their demise to the delusion no different. At least, through the help of the delusion, they would gain the power to slow their failing efforts. Without it, their life would be snuffed out without a moment's notice, weak and unchangeable to the will of eternity. Then he speaks about manufacturing the Shogun's search for eternity and bringing about the Vision Hunt decree through manipulation. He says all of this as if it is the most obvious thing to do. They want to sell the delusions, so start a war. It is through this interaction that we can see Scaramouche's lack of value towards not only humanity, but in the human heart itself. It is even more telling when we learn that Scaramouche is a failed doll created by the Raiden Shogun. That's a tale for another day. Seconds before the traveler is able to lay down the smack on that 4th grader's science project, he's overtaken by the purple miasma. Turns out that the purple fog is actually the wrath of the gods, disease that feeds off of a person's anger and changes them into terrible creatures in search of nothing but vengeance. It is also the reason we have those rageous vine bosses. Neat, huh? After passing out on the floor, you can faintly see a familiar person walking towards Scaramouche. After a brief black screen, you are welcomed with the same picture you saw last night, except Yamiko's wearing more clothing. Why isn't she stepping on you yet? She tells you to count from 3 to 1, then 1 to 3. I'm going to try to zoom through the rest of this content since the video is already getting chungy-wungy. When the traveler finally wakes up, he realizes that he's no longer in the delusion factory. Paimon and the traveler wonder how Yamiko got them out of such a tight situation without getting hurt. But, like every good story, instead of just saying how she did it, she instead dances around the question like a ballerina. Conversation changes to the Raiden Shogun and the traveler asks if Yamiko knows anything about her. Turns out, her and the Raiden Shogun go way back. We learn that the person the traveler fought in the plane of Euthymia was the real Raiden, while the other wandering the outside world is the fake Raiden. Not a confusing concept at all. It's a pretty interesting plot point. In order to pursue eternity for her people, she reached eternity herself. Back in patch 2.something, we learned that Zhongli raised a pet dragon, which ended up turning evil down the line. Why did it turn evil, you might ask? It's because of a thing known as erosion. Erosion is loss of memory due to hundreds of years spent alive. So, in order for A to prevent that, she locked herself away into her euthymia, isolating herself from the outside world in order to better her people's lives. Out of everyone in Inazuma, she was the one undergoing the worst experience, where people could continue living their lives even though their ambitions were stripped away with their visions. They could still live. Imagine how A must feel. She was devoid of everything. Taste, sound, love, companionship, all of it stripped away just so that her people could strive. This fundamental understanding of the character alone has made her more compelling than any of the other archons we've seen so far. Miko also says that A's eternity is defined by the fear of loss, which I'm not going to go into A's mentality any further, but you can see how they just keep making the Shogun into more and more of a dynamic character. Not just some cartoonish villain. Miko then says that the best way to stop the Shogun is to beat A in her plane of euthymia. So, the traveler does the only thing he knows how to at a time like this. Training montage! No, I'm not joking. Let's go! Let's go!
You're never gonna make it, you're not good enough. There's a million other people with the same stuff. You really think you're different? Man, you must be kidding. Think you're gonna hit it, but you just don't get it. It's impossible, it's not probable, you're irresponsible. Too many obstacles, you gotta stop it, yo. You gotta take it slow, you can't be a pro. Don't waste your time no more. Who the fuck are you to tell me what to do? I don't give a damn if you say you disapprove. I'm gonna make my move, I'm gonna make it soon. And I'll do it cause it's what I wanna fucking do. Cause all these opinions and all these positions, they come in millions. They blocking your vision, but no, you can't listen. That shit is all fiction, cause you hold the power as long as you're dreaming.
After training, Miko tells you everything you did during the montage was pointless, because it would take longer than a few minutes to beat a person who's been training for, oh, I don't know, hundreds of years? She then heads back to the shrine to greet an important guest. The traveler follows her back, only to find out the important guest is none other than the Kujo Sara. Miko's new plan is as followed. Get Sara on our side in order to win the war. Fairly simple plan and concept. Sara immediately wants the traveler in custody, but due to the shrine being out of the army's jurisdiction, she is unable to arrest him. Yae attempts to convince Sara that her own clan is working with the Fatui. Sara doesn't buy this, obviously, and asks for proof. Unable to supply said proof, Yae asks Sara to give her 3 days. Cue the music, maestro! Miko tells the traveler to find a ninja by the name of Sayu. He finds her and takes her to the tea house to meet with Ayaka and Toma. There, they plan a heist of the documents required to prove their collusion with the Fatui. The traveler then meets with Yoimiya to set up a diversion while Sayu steals the documents. They wait till nightfall, then cause an explosion near the statue of the Shogun. This causes dozens of guards to rush to the traveler and also causes a convenient escape route to spawn. When did this carnival ride get here? Who knows? The traveler arrives back at the tea house, mission accomplished. He takes the documents from Sayu and returns to the shrine. There, Miko hands the documents to Kujo Sara, who, after learning that all of her beliefs have been a complete lie, rush over to her adopted father's residence for answers. The traveler rushes after her, where they enter into the Kujo's residence and fight off a horde of guards. Finally, the owner enters, Kujo Takayuki. This is when we have an interesting exchange between father and daughter. It's the only time we've had an exchange between relatives of different viewpoints in Genshin. So, this scene is already slightly more intense in nature due to the circumstances surrounding it. At first, Takayuki acts like just another power-hungry character looking to overthrow the shogunate. Then you learn the reason behind his decision. There are several clans fighting for power in Inazuma, so in order to gain an advantage over the other clans, he teamed up with the Fatui. Kujo Sara demands to know why he decided to betray the Raiden Shogun. But Takayuki does not see this as a betrayal. He's simply using the Fatui to further his clan's reputation. Then, once his clan is the best of the best, he will betray the Fatui. His reasoning behind this is that no matter what harm he might be helping the Fatui to incur on the Raiden Shogun, it is all minuscule. The Shogun's power is so great he believes there is no possible way for them to defeat her. You could say Takayuki is a deep character though. He's about as deep as a puddle of water. Sara boasts about holding loyalty to the Shogun above all else, telling her father that she's going to inform the Shogun of his collusion with the Fatui. This, in turn, would stop the Vision Hunt decree. Her father informs her that she is already too late. The Shogun is currently holding a meeting with a Shinez Nyan diplomat. After hearing the Sara storm off in the hopes of saving the Shogunate, the traveler rushes after her, finding the unconscious guards scattered along the ground. It's safe to assume that they were tasked with not allowing anyone to enter the Shogun's palace while the meeting was being held. It's safe to assume Sara had to knock out the guards due to a previous order issued by her father. But if you're feeling a little wacky, you can imagine that she was sprinting with such force that she didn't realize her fat dumpy was knocking them all out. That's the best thing about not showing a scene. It's all up for interpretation. The traveler rushes into the meeting place, finding a Sara knocked unconscious. Beside her stood an old enemy, Signora, a villain built up to be the biggest threat in all of Tibet, second only to the god responsible for separating the player from their sister. As the traveler came face to face with the two of the strongest enemies known to the player base at the time, he came up with a quick and decisive plan, a challenge before the throne. This would be a great plot point if they had only hinted at it being a common practice during Inazuma's history, but it wasn't. Imagine if, in Act 1, they talked about how countless duels happened before the throne in order for the 3 upper clans to be chosen. That would have been a great callback to the previous events to the story, but let's not get hung up on this point and continue forward. The Shogun agrees to the terms of the challenge and allows for it to happen. Signora, on the other hand, mocks the traveler for making such a brash decision. For the first time ever, we are fighting against Signora, the person who has already acquired 2 of the 7 Gnosises, a person capable of beating a literal god with ease. Every quest she was one step ahead of the traveler, always there just in time to get what she wanted. But just this once, the traveler was there to stop her. Stop her, he did. Oh, 1 second. Let me just... There we go.
Your searing reckoning. All must burn!
The second reason I decided to make this video is this scene right here.
So strong, but how?
I am a Snezhnayan diplomat. You know what happens if you lay a finger on me. I swear, if you strike me, I will make sure... The Fatui will make sure that your precious Inazuma... Stop! I order you! And you! Filthy rats! All of you!
What? They kill her?
It's borderline perfect. The elegance the Shogun shows while walking, the Mosa no Hito Tachi in hand. The assumption she was about to strike the traveler snuffed out immediately as she carelessly passes him. Signora's face as she attempts to regain her composure. The futile attempts to threaten, then bargain with the silent shogunate. The Shogun's eyes glowing as she spawns an electro ring behind her. And finally, a barrage of strikes in a single instance that not only kills Signora, but absolutely obliterates her. It's beautiful. So beautiful. She then says this.
You are the enemy of eternity. But as the victor, I acknowledge your honor. Therefore, I shall allow you to leave Tenshukaku alive.
Once the traveler leaves, he notices that the air around him stagnate, filled with electrostatic charge. He is forced to walk his way out of Tenshukaku as ominous music defines the atmosphere. After a couple of feet, the screen goes black, showing only a few key words. Then, just as you reach Chinchikaku's exit. Hey, do you remember how just a moment ago I said Senua's death was the second reason I wanted to make this video? Well, this is the first.
There will always be those who dare to brave the lightning's glow.
So we meet again.
This is one of the best scenes in the game, if not the best scene. On the surface level, it's incredible. The initial attack with Raiden Shogun towering over the Traveler is a cool perspective they never attempted in Genshin. It also closely resembles a scene from Kill la Kill. For those knowers in the chat, the moment Kazuha dashes forward and blocks the attack from a god, the Shogun striking at his heart only to send Kazuha flying backwards, and finally, the Traveler saving the soldiers' lives by entering into A's plane of euthymia. But if you look into it just a little bit deeper, you can see some very cool moments at play. For example, in the cutscene where Raiden Shogun kills Senua, she says she will allow you to leave Chinchikaku alive, Chinchikaku being the Raiden Shogun's residence. That's why the moment the Traveler takes a single step out of Chinchikaku, the Shogun appears behind him, striking at the main enemy of eternity. She still upheld her promise, but the moment her promise was fulfilled, it was all fair game. Another really cool thing they did was finish Kazuha's arc. To elaborate a little further, during the lead up to Inazuma's release, we have to compete in a tournament in order to join Beto's crew. That is where we meet Kazuha, a wanderer hailing from the land of Inazuma. We also get a cool cutscene with him, telling us of his sad backstory. Here we learn Kazuha had a friend that died challenging the Shogun. Actually, if the cutscene is showing everything accurately, he died on the exact same steps they're on right now. In the cutscene, he says he shows remorse for not making it in time to save his friend, arriving just as the Shogun struck the killing blow. Now, let's head back to the current cutscene. Kazuha finds himself repeating his past mistakes, arriving just as the Shogun is about to deliver the killing blow. His eyes widen as memories from the past fill his head. There will always be those who dare the lightning's glow. A saying told to him by his deceased friend. The vision given to him by his friend begins to glow once more, giving him the ability to dash forward using Anemo and reflect the Shogun's attack using Electro. Kazuha saves the Traveler from facing a similar fate as his friend, lights the vision that his friend once held, fulfilling one of the reasons he became a Traveler in the first place, and also shows that it's possible for a vision holder to wield more than one vision, something we've never seen done before. You could say that Tartaglia, or Tartaglia, as the knowers say, did the same thing, but remember he gained the power of Electro through the use of a delusion, not through the use of a second vision. These two powers are completely different and shouldn't be confused with one another. This same act alone opens the doors massively for the future of Genshin's story. Imagine characters in the future wielding an E ability that is cryo, but when held, it changes into pyro. Maybe even an ult that auto-procs both cryo and prio at the same time, allowing no other element reactions to occur. I know I'm getting into power creep territory, but there is a way to balance this. Just make the two elements dog shit. There you go! Problem solved! Electro and Hydro, let's go, baby! After entering into the realm of euthymia with a big freaking sword that makes you question why your traveler can't do that, you can see the Shogun smiling. Maybe she's happy to have another visitor. After having a brief conversation, followed by another losing fight, the traveler reaches into his pocket to notice the charm Miko gave him glowing. She then appears behind him, Naruto style. Yaimiko tells the traveler to believe in his inner anime and remember all the ambitions of the people whose visions she's stolen. She tells the traveler to close his eyes as the music swells. Voices begin to swarm the traveler's mind as the words that translators forgot to translate, their one job, brighten the dark screen. Stars flash into existence as the traveler slowly rises from the floor. If you look closely enough, you can see for a split second the wasted potential. With the power of God and anime on the traveler's side, he's now ready to fight the godly being known as Raiden Shogun. After a significantly easier fight, the Shogun admits defeat. It is here that we learn why the Shogun has been acting so selfishly.
When lightning flashes, it casts a shadow. My name means shadow. With my blade, I purged all obstacles to progress. And yet, something was lost with each step forward. In the end, I even lost her. The tales are still retold in the shade of every Thunder Sakura. But the wounds left on our nation by that terrible loss still ache. Never stop searching, even if only for a brief flash of light. If nothing else, we have the present moment. She said that once. But I've seen a nation stride forward and lose everything to the heavenly principles. Perhaps only if time stands still will the lightning's glow never fade. The present moment is a fragile illusion. Only eternity can bring us closer to the heavenly principles. I am no longer the shadow. Mine is the most supreme and noble form. Let power over the realm be vested within me. In this form shall I honor my subjects' dream, for a land of eternity, unchanging forevermore.
So yeah, her actions are kinda warranted in a certain degree. She's lived for hundreds of years, witnessed kingdoms destroyed by violating the heavenly principles, her friends and even family taken away from her over her years of life. With Zhongli's story mostly focusing around his endless time governing a nation and how erosion can eventually consume the mind, A's story is about eternal life itself, the power of living hundreds upon hundreds of years. If you talk to anyone about what they remember most of the time it will be something they regret. As a human, we are more inclined to remember the bad things done to us than the good because that's just how we were made. Imagine A living for all those years with the weight of countless deaths on her mind. It's only natural she would risk everything in order to stop it. The only way she believes she can stop it is by achieving a nation as closely to the heavenly principles as possible. A nation in eternity. A nation in stasis. Miko mocks the ideals of the heavenly principles and tells A to be selfish for once in her life. Eternity for the people of Inazuma would only last a mere 100 years. Then they would pass away. But not the Shogun. She's seemingly immortal. She would suffer alone, forever. With the shogun's loss, she decided to abide by the traveler's wishes and abolish the Vision Hunt decree. She also says she's willing to rethink her stance on the matter of achieving eternity, and with that, we receive a nice cutscene wrapping up the Inazuma story arc.
As promised, the Raiden Shogun abolished the Vision Hunt decree. Finally, her people's wishes penetrated her locked heart. Beyond the plane of euthymia, she saw what eternity means in the eyes of the world. When one's fervent ambition burns brightly, the gods will cast their gaze upon you. Some ambitions have the power to heal wounds, to bring victory, to inspire hope. But some ambitions outlive their masters long after the soul ascends. They remain as they were in the beginning. Burning bright and true for all eternity.
Let's talk about A real quick and define her actions in a decisive way so that I can make a future point more recognizable to you all. A's personality seems to be defined by the urge to do what's right for her people even though it may cause them short-term harm. Her true self is locked away deep inside of her subconscious as she allows her outer self to carry out her will for an eternal Inazuma. I'm sure some of you might know what I'm getting at this point. A was inspired by people with a bipolar disorder that is experiencing a manic episode. A's outer self is the being experiencing the episode while her inner self, which is locked away in her plane of euthymia, is her true feelings. She believes that what she is doing is correct, even though her judgment is being clouded by her intense emotions of fear. That's why the only way to save A is to change her mind inside of the plane of euthymia, which, once again, stands for a state of living without mood disturbances, a term commonly associated with bipolar disorder. The opposing argument would be something along the lines of, but the outer version of A is robotic and not experiencing emotional swings, and the A within euthymia is still acting somewhat manic when it comes to her beliefs, even though she is in euthymia. And my argument to that is, they took inspiration from it, not copy it. I feel like naming A's inner palace euthymia alone is enough to prove my point. And with that, we can end our discussion about the Inazuma story. But we aren't done just yet. How did Miko save the traveler from Scaramouche? Well, turns out she gave him the Shogun's Gnosis. That's right, the Shogun is so OP she doesn't even need the thing that labels her as a god. She just is a god. Someone should tell Zhongli to stop messing around. He said he couldn't make any more Mora since he didn't have his Gnosis. That man just likes scamming people. And with a hint to where we are going next, spoiler alert, it's Sumeru. And that finally ends the Inazuma storyline. What did you guys think of it? Did I change anyone's opinion? Let me know in the comments down below. As for my opinion, the story is above average. If it weren't for some bad choices and rushed story moments, it could have been a 10 out of 10 experience. The climactic fight with Signor and the cutscene right after that is a wonderful surprise to say the least, but the amount of filler is still bogging the story down. If I had to rate it, I'd give Inazuma's story an 8 out of 10. I was borderline giving it a 7, but it has two of the best moments in the entire game for me, so I couldn't help but give it a little boost up. One thing I wish they would have done was make the climactic final battle a little better rather than it just being the power of friendship. But it is what it is. By the way, you guys smell that? I told you to stop. I told you to stop trying to summon the eternal flames of Beelzebub, but whatever, I guess, you know? Come on, Forg. Let's go before it gets too late. I got some offshore accounts I can still get access to.
Try to play, but you're never gonna beat me. Look the other way, what I'm doing ain't easy. Bloody hands stained from the people who deceive me. Muddy hands break through the chains, go free me. Looking for change, looking for pain. Pulling a mob, pushing a train. I'll never stop, stick to a lane. Pick up the pieces and go rearrange. I'll be the best above all the rest, put me to the test and expect nothing less, you check as I'm chess, what's happening next, yeah. He got the venom, a tangible weapon, no coming in second. This life is a lesson, he got a new engine from pain, that's a blessing. New focus, no guessing, just bold and obsession. All in his possession, you got their attention. I'll leave an impression and take a redemption. Just kill, no discretion, your mind is a weapon. 11-11, it's time for progression, You could try to play, but you're never gonna beat me. Look the other way, what I'm doing ain't easy. Bloody hands stained from the people who deceive me. Muddy hands break through the chains, go free me. People like sheep move feet, hurt it easy. You don't wanna be fast asleep when they scheming. Better stand tall, ready for a fight, believe me. When they try the chains, you can say no, free me. So he's been looking for somebody who could save him, instead of searching inside for what they gave him. A strong will, strong mind causes mayhem. We could change the world, change times, rearrange them. Staying on pace, running the race. Life is a chase, I don't want a place, I wanna be first. Work till it hurts, dehydrated thirst till I'm in a hearse. High ambitions in the right mind can take you so far. It's like you lived a few lifetimes. Take off from a break off from the weak minds, they can stay soft. You can change lives, you create thoughts, never waste time. You got one shot, you got one life, better pop off. What do you like? Make a dream job. No 9-5, no mean boss, just my life and free thoughts. You could try to play, but you're never gonna beat me. Look the other way, what I'm doing ain't easy. Bloody hands stained from the people who deceive me. Muddy hands break through the chains, go free me. People like sheep move feet, hurt it easy. You don't wanna be fast asleep when they scheming. Better stand tall, ready for a fight, believe me. When they try the chains, you can say no, free me.